Call of Duty has always been a popular and sometimes hated game for many gameplay and gamer reasons. Now, I won't get into those, but it's also been a game of controversy, of pushing the envelope by depicting realistic violent scenes you won't get in many other games. It's one of the main reasons people like these kinds of games. The three big ones I can think of are the shock and awe mission in COD 4, Modern Warfare, where 30,000 American troops are killed, including the main character, all due to a nuclear bomb. In Modern Warfare 3, in the mission Davis Family Vacation, where you control a father taking a video of their daughter and wife in London, a truck bomb blows up and kills everyone on the block. And the most famous being in Modern Warfare 2, the No Russian mission, where you play as a mole in a terrorist group at the airport, where you're allowed to take part in gunning down civilians. This is the kind of content in Call of Duty. Many journalists that did attend the E3 preview said the game looks great, but packs a serious emotional punch. The campaign is designed to be provocative, with missions ripped from headlines, with a sense of wartime dread and the intensity of real-world violence. But to IGN, or some journalists working there, they seem unaware of this reality.
At least personally, I feel like I don't necessarily want to play 15 to 20 hours of what I was just shown.
These are individual scenes that last moments or sometimes an entire level and seem completely scripted. I highly doubt that game developers would make an entire game that is completely controversial, but even if they did, so what? That's what we've come to expect from this franchise.
It's very jarring, and I found myself feeling extremely uncomfortable during the demo.
Mission accomplished.
I hope the game isn't 10 hours of that sort of feel, because that would be very intense and ultimately not very fun.
Apparently intense, realistic military shooters are suddenly not very fun. You are a games journalist. Do you know what video games are? Do you know what Call of Duty is designed to be? Like a visceral and violent game? Maybe it's just not your cup of tea, but to say something that is not intense is not fun, I mean, maybe Animal Crossing is more this guy's speed.
It is extremely visceral, it is extremely unsettling, but in spite of all of that, or maybe because of that, I mean, it's my game of the show.
Wow, an actual thinker, not swayed by his personal tastes. Bravo there, tall glasses man.
Yeah, it's a terraced house in North London. I'm from North London, so I can assure you that it looked very accurate. They even had the correct train on the train line, which was very...
That's impressive.
It is one of the most visually impressive games I've seen.
Yeah.
So the guy who sees it as real and intense, but ultimately not very fun, I'm not connecting. Like, what? It seems like this journalist connected with the game so well that he had no fun with it. How does that even work?
Yeah, the attention
It does look
to detail.
beautiful.
I think the most jarring part is that, of course, this is in London, and you're crawling through this house. I mean, like, crawling. You're stealth walking through this house with many people, many teams, many guns. You got your night vision goggles. Like, you're all suited up. But you're going into a civilian house, essentially. And granted, they are terrorists, but it's still weird.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
A Tier 1 operator fully equipped doing their job is weird. Okay, I mean, I've never been one, but that's the beauty of fiction. You get to make believe, and in video games you get to be that character. Are you a games journalist?
There are female combatants being used as human shields that then grab a gun and try and shoot you.
I love representation.
It's unfortunate though, because like these mechanics are super interesting. Like they make combat a little bit more tactical. They give you a lot more options. Like the fact that at least in this particular demo, like the environments were very destructible. That's all super interesting, but then it puts those mechanics at odds with itself, making you so uncomfortable to the point where, like, I at least personally, I feel like I don't necessarily want to play 15 to 20 hours of what I was just shown.
Aw, an intense, amazing, realistic experience, and this guy doesn't want to play it because you have to shoot terrorists that might be women who carry babies.
While you are going into a moral gray area, like that's exactly what it is. It is a morally ambiguous area. Your enemies are no longer wearing uniforms that denote that, like, it's not black and white anymore.
That's amazing. Thank you, Infinity Ward, for doing morally gray gameplay scenarios and showing just how squeamish and immature these journalists are. And no, I don't care if she's a woman and she's potentially more sensitive to art. You're either good critics or you're not.
Also where some of the difficulty in, oh, it looks so beautiful and so realistic, so when I have to then shoot these people, it looks like you're shooting, like, whether they're terrorists or not, of course.
The game is so realistic, it feels like you're shooting actual people instead of pixels on a screen. Either these people were so immersed in their experience, it's like they had some sort of bizarre trauma, or they're so disconnected from reality they can't differentiate between a fictional world and their lives.
Infinity Ward is intentionally pushing buttons on this, and that's a risky thing to do, but and maybe they'll fall flat on their face, and this game's going to end up being offensive to anyone who's served in the military. I don't know. That is entirely possible. If they get it right, and they remember this game's being headed by a couple of former leads from Naughty Dog, so there's a pedigree there. If they get it right, it's going to be one of the most memorable and probably best Call of Duties ever in this annual long-running series.
I'm sure military personnel have seen way more carnage than what a video game can depict, even in nuclear explosive territory. And if they were to play this, they probably wouldn't care because they would know what's real and what's not. As for sales, Call of Duty has been selling in the millions every year. The latest being in 2018, Black Ops 3 at 14.3 million units. If this game is as visceral and as intense as these weak-stomached people believe, it'll sell much, much more.
I think it's really important to remember this was a demo. It was taken out of context, but in the context that they showed it to us, I felt uncomfortable, and it felt, I don't know, it just felt so real, and I know that's what they were going for, but I don't know, you can speak to this, but just like, that these are real-life scenarios.
These are positives, a realistic experience in a fictional virtual world. Sign me up.
Right, and so the whole thing what Infinity Ward is going for is like these are instances taken out of the headlines, right? Mm-hmm. And when you approach that, it has to be done with such care.
Yep.
And the demo we saw wasn't really given that care because, of course, we don't have the context. We don't have anyone saying, hey, this is where we're at so far, why it's okay for us just to go into the house and shoot everybody in there instead of taking them prisoner, except for like 2 people. And it's not very clear, and so it was just very jarring because of that.
Well, here's the only context these people need. It's not real. It's a game. Now, maybe the narrative or mission briefing could certainly be clearer, but it sounds like everyone save Tall Glasses Man can't differentiate between reality and the gaming world.
At one point, they break into a room and you train your gun on the person who's in there, and it's a woman, and she's running to a crib, and she picks up a baby, and you're like, what do you do there?
Well, obviously, if you're a good person, you don't shoot the baby.
Unless there's some gameplay penalty for doing so, if a terrorist uses anything as a shield, you shoot to center of mass and eliminate your target. That includes body armor, bookcases, walls, and yes, babies. In fact, I'd love to see the mission report after you slaughter the whole household.
What happens if you do accidentally kill the woman and her child? Does the mission end? Does it change the story of the game at all?
Yeah, we don't know, and I think that's the biggest question for me is seeing out whether there is a lot of choice that impacts the story or if it is very much a story they intend to tell in a certain way.
Intense, emotional, morally gray choices that matter. Where do I sign up?
If there is some kind of choice that you can make in the game, that wasn't in the demo.
Right, and
saw.
So I think that would be if the headline coming out of the Modern Warfare reboot or reimagining, whatever you want to call it, if the headline coming out of this was you can play this game non-lethally, I think that would have, if that had been tacked onto the end of that demo, that would have really changed my opinion of it.
You're hunting terrorists in London. That's not how counterterrorism works. You don't use tear gas and rubber bullets against enemies of the state. You eliminate them. What is wrong with these people?
Is it just a realistic, gritty story that I read on the news every day? Because that's not a game I want to play, really.
I recall being able to kill kids back in Fallout 2. There's no longer any controversy over this kind of depiction. So what if it's more realistic? Maybe these journalists should have another profession, or just go look at colorful Nintendogs.
Is that okay for video games to do? I think absolutely.
I'm with you, Tall Glasses Man.
I think it's a medium to tell stories. I hope that Call of Duty tread the line between being respectful, and I hope their intentions are altruistic here.
And you lost me. I want the developers to do whatever the devil they please in the most visceral, gray-areaed, violent shooter possible. Be as realistic as possible. Don't hold back. Give us everything you can put your mind to. Put your heart and soul into it and push as far as your imagination can take you. As for these journalists, I think it's time they learn to code.